Welcome to Overcome Podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking with Patrick Brennan, functional movement specialist, performance nutritionist. Patrick is going to talk about neuromuscular exercise activation and also about rehab, recovery, and nutrition. So let's get started. Welcome to Overcome Podcast. Today with my friend Patrick Brennan, also known as Patrick the Punisher. Welcome to the show, Patrick. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Patrick, I'd like to start this conversation today with a topic that you dominate a lot, and it's something that I had the opportunity to do with you recently, which
Yeah.
is the electrical stimulation for rehab recovery. Can you explain a little bit more? What is this about the electrical stimulation, why it works, and how it works?
The particular one that I use
Yes.
or generic stim versus what I use.
Well, let's go through the one that you use.
So I use a machine called a Newbie from a company called NewFit.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of only two machines that you can lengthen tissue with instead of just adding a current to and shortening it. You know, most stims, Mark Pro, Compex, not that they're bad, but you're just adding a higher level of current and you just keep shortening the muscle tissue in a contraction, and it can only get to a certain spot. So when it gets completely shortened, there's nowhere else for it to go, and it doesn't really lend for full range. It doesn't fix things in full range. It'll warm you up. Again, it's not bad, but it's not optimal.
And what is this idea about neuromuscular re-education using this type of machine?
Yeah, normally after any injury, the body really gets into this like stop and protect mode. It's our body's way smarter than our brain is. So normally, if we hurt ourselves, we'll deal with the pain and try to work through it, right? So your body doesn't want that to happen. So neurologically, it'll actually, reduce the amount of muscle fiber you can use in the area, hoping that you won't use it. It's like going in the closet and shutting a bunch of breakers off if you're going to work on your house, right? You're afraid you're going to get hurt. Your body doesn't want to give you access or give all the available tissue to you to, you could possibly hurt yourself again. So that's the easy way for me to describe it, really.
So before this machine, which method did you use to achieve similar results, and how this machine saved your time? Because in the past you used to do rehab with athletes and everything, so you were able to get them to the point that they needed to be to perform in that high level. So it was just a matter of more sessions, and now it's less sessions, or there are more things involved?
I still use a lot of different modalities. In the past, though, you want to look for range of motion, flexibility, then create stability in the joint or the tissues, and then you can move forward with strength and things and such. And it's just so much faster with the machine because you can reactivate tissue without loading the joint, through movement, but not even holding your own body weight. So it just lends you to do it quicker, safer, because you're not putting the joint at in a bad position or loading it or put it in an area of jeopardy, so to speak. There's always especially with pro athletes that I work with, you're always trying to push the boundaries to see where their limits are because, they're gonna push the limits on the field.
Right.
And sometimes you overreach and have to step back and then overreach and step back to kind of see where they're at. And the machine just allows you to see where they're at because they'll be able to take more and more current without loading the joint as you turn more tissue on. The machine kind of helps you figure that out.
Yeah, but there is anything that the machine is able to achieve that for you would be almost like impossible to do with traditional method? For example, the level
Yeah.
of contraction that you were talking about the other day, right?
Oh, that was just for hypertrophy. Like the machine can be used for hypertrophy as well and building strength. But this allows you, the machine just allows you to turn tissue on without jeopardizing localized connective tissue
Hmm.
or bone. Let's say you break a bone, and you don't really want to load it, right?
Right.
So through a normal recovery phase of anything, a lot of times the injury itself is easier to rehab than fixing all the compensation patterns your body has adopted during your waiting time to have surgery, during the time post surgery, waiting to go to PT,
Hmm.
and then just normal life outside of PT because you're not in physical therapy 24 hours a day. If you even go 2-3 times a week, a lot of physical therapy is only working on that area. A lot of times they don't look at the body globally or don't look at you from a 50,000 foot standpoint, so to speak. They're at 10 feet off the ground because they're just looking at the injury that's on your paperwork that they got, and you got to look at the body as a whole. You have to treat the entire client, not their injury, because their identity isn't their injury.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
mainly because when you have an injury, like in my case, the foot, left foot, there's a lot of things that I'm compensate with my right leg, my right foot. So now I'm all off balance a lot.
well, not just that, but you have a crazy high work ethic. You have a high pain tolerance. You want to do what you want to do, Yuri. Like I said to you yesterday when you saw me, you're a great client for me and an awful client for me because I have to keep pulling the reins back because you always want to do more. And that's great, but more isn't always better.
Right.
So, you wanting to get through a workout because you're focused on the workout, you don't realize how much longer you're going to extend your rehab or the length of your injury because of all the compensation patterns you adopt. The central nervous system and the brain adopts certain certain patterns that are so hard to unwind from a neurological standpoint. Your foot might be great, but like I told you, because of all the extra work the other leg's doing, the other foot, other knee, hip, psoas, your
So now
back
you
gets
now
out
you
of
develop
alignment.
a whole pattern system that is off balance, and now you have other problems to deal with.
Exactly. So the machine, you know, by definition, kind of erases a lot of that because I can get everything fixed faster. So your compensation patterns aren't as deeply ingrained, so to speak.
Hmm.
Even though that's not exactly what it was designed for, it's an outstanding, kind of side effect of it.
Right. Now, going a little bit off of the use of the machine and more based on your experience dealing with so many athletes, NFL athletes, NFL level athletes, there is also the psychological aspect of the rehab, which is there are many athletes that sometimes they hesitate to do some movements, fear of getting injury again. So
Mm-hmm.
how much the mental toughness and the lack of fear plays during the rehab? Is it okay to have fear, or is it better to go all the way, or is it better to have be right in the middle?
You know what? It really depends on the sport, and then it really depends on the position on the field because they their body handles different force vectors depending on their position. So, you know, I deal predominantly with offensive linemen.
Mm.
I will do some other positions if like they're friends with other teammates and they see that I've gotten good success with it with their teammate, they bring somebody else in for rehab. Any position really. But these guys are pretty driven, just to be able to get to that level. So unless it's a reoccurring injury that I step halfway into, it's something that they've hurt multiple times, of course, that's going to kind of play in the back of your head because no matter how much you want to use something or move in a certain way, when you have an injury or compensation pattern or, your body's adopted poor movement, it's definitely gonna mess with you a little bit.
Right.
So that's the fun part of my job. I love what I do. I'm in the gym. I see 14 people a day sometimes, hour sessions, and everyone's different. The body's the same, but I have
But
to play
if
detective.
you
So to
had to
speak.
do if you had to theoretically come up with a statistics of success rate for your best athletes, what they have in common as far as the mindset during the recovery process.
They're not really afraid of the injury, so to speak. Nobody wants to get injured, but it's been such a part of their life. At that level, high collegiate level, football, NFL football, there's so few times that you're playing at 100%. You might not be injured, but you're playing hurt or not 100%. And by the time they make it to the pro level, they're used to that. So, you unless you get somebody who's just a freak or statistically should be playing lotto for never being hurt through, a 5 or 6 year career, let's say, they're just used to it. It's kind of part of the process for them. So the rehab is just, it's just another stepping stone to get back on the field. So
Well, it also depends on the injury, right? Because they probably are used to injuries,
100%.
but if it is, for example, the Linz Frank injury, which takes even high level athletes out of the field for 6 months at least, that's a big one.
Yeah, and more than that with my guys because you have a 300 plus pound athlete. So, the variance of bone and tendon and ligament strength or makeup vary slightly. I mean, you might be stronger or have better density in certain areas, but you take a Liz Frank injury. Look what you're going through. Imagine trying to be a 300-pound man and just start to move on it or walk on
Yep.
it. That's tremendous amount of pain. So a lot of times they put these guys in knee scooters. They won't even put them on crutches. And just think of that position on a knee scooter all the time.
Yeah.
Again, you're adopting another movement pattern. Your brain gets a hold of something. Your body starts to get fixated in that position. Your dominant or non-injured leg does. I mean, it's that's the big thing with me. I'll get players come in, and whether they have a foot injury or not, it's the first thing I'll look at is their feet because that's what comes in contact with the ground. That's where they're creating torque. And I mean, there's just so many teams that don't bother looking at their feet unless they have an injury or, a turf toe or something. They never really look at the biomechanics of the foot, which can change so many things. I'll have guys come in that I've never worked with before, and they tell me 5 things hurt, or they have issues with 5 things. And I don't go near those things in the beginning. I immediately work on their feet, and they repeatedly say, no, my feet are fine. It's this. And I'm just like, relax. I'm a ground-up guy. Again, we're going to look at your body globally as a full mechanism, not just your injuries. And then I find a bunch of things wrong with their feet. We correct all that. And now 5 of the 6 things that they told me they're having issues with, are gone. Or 3 of the 5, and now we're down to only 2 things. And they just look at me like I'm crazy, going, "What did you do to my feet?" And I'm like, "I just made them work the right way again." That's instead of just looking at what hurts, because then you end up just chasing pain around.
Yeah.
Let's start from the ground up and let's fix all your biomechanics. Let's fix how you feel, how you interpret movement, how you interpret the ground. And from there, then we can start pecking away at things that you have problems with because
Because you're going through the root cause and not through the symptom.
Exactly.
Sometimes the symptom is just a way to externalize a problem, but the root cause of that problem is something else.
100%. And most symptoms are never the injury. That's just what's manifesting. It's so often not the actual injury, even though they feel it there.
Interesting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I started to pay more attention to my feet since the injury, and it's interesting how many things we do when we just walk. Because I had to do
Huge.
physical therapy to realign and be able to walk again, and it's important. The big toe has a huge importance, which I had no idea it was so
100%.
important. My doctor even said, "Well, the big toe is one of the most important things on your feet."
Yep.
Like, wow,
It's all you balance.
that's yeah. And for me that practice jiu-jitsu barefoot, having a good posture and be able to have the good mobility on the ankle and on the toes and everything is primordial. Is very important.
Yeah, and your foot mechanics, again, you want to start really proximal to that area. If you have poor foot mechanics or poor circulation in your feet, poor lymphatic movement of lymphatic fluid in your feet, it'll affect your ankle. So then you have diminished ankle mobility. Then that moves uphill because it's compromising how your knee moves, and then you're compensating it. And I mean, it's just crazy. I've seen poor biomechanical movement of a foot affect somebody's neck all the way upstream.
Wow.
And they've been to 10 people, and this guy did this, and I've been to this chiropractor, and no matter what he does, it doesn't come. And then I really make them take their shoes off and go through like a dynamic warm-up type of thing and watch their feet. And I'm like, oh my God, nobody saw your foot do this? You can't feel that? And then we fix the foot and ankle, let's say, and then miraculously the neck doesn't hurt anymore. And they're like, well, and then I have people that have had foot problems and they go to a podiatrist, and the first thing a podiatrist does is goes, we'll order you orthotics. We'll take a mold of your foot and we'll get you an orthotic to make sure your foot's in the proper position in your shoes, which is the worst thing you can do, because then your foot leans on that. It's a crutch. So it doesn't work. It doesn't stay strong. It doesn't stay pliable because it just gives up, because the orthotic is giving you the shape of your foot that's supposed to be right. One of the first things I do when NFL players come to me, I ask them, if they had a foot or an ankle injury, and I'm like, do you wear orthotics? You have an insert in your shoe? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, where are your shoes? And mind you, orthotics are not cheap. I grab their shoes, I take the inserts out, and I throw them right in the garbage in front of them. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is the worst thing for your feet. This is why you have nagging injuries in your knee, your hip, all the stuff running upstream from it, because your feet are really weak. And they're like, weak? And then I'll do a foot test and fix and see how strong their toes are and how strong their feet are. And I mean, you got a 320-pound man that is, forget about a normal 320-pound guy, how strong they are. This is elite athlete strength. They're off the charts. People, yeah, you watched them play on Sunday, but you have no idea how strong and fast a 300-pound man is that plays in the NFL. And they can't lift their big toe. Like, I hold on to it and not even push hard, and they can't even lift it up.
And they might even say, why does it matter if I cannot lift it up, right?
Yep, always. And then I'm a huge fan of showing somebody. So I'll go through a whole lower leg activation. Well, I'll usually activate the posterior tibialis, which is a muscle actually under your calf, but behind your tibia, which activates your arch. It picks the middle of your foot up. So I'll activate that and do like 3 or 4 other spots of MAT. And then really, very hardly manipulate their feet. And you can feel all their metatarsals are crammed. They're all smushed together like this from being in cleats and pushing on the outside of their cleats. So I pull it all apart physically. You'll hear all this noise in the foot, like cracking. And then I realign everything and then turn the foot on, and then I make them go walk. And they're like, oh my God, it feels like my other foot is not even a part of my body. And I'm like, well, it's just not working. They both didn't work. So look what happens and how different you feel when I only turn the one on and you just walk 30 yards and come back.
Yeah.
Drastic difference. One of the biggest things I get is one guy's like, he's like, I feel like I can pick up pencils with my feet right now. Like, literally pick up anything I want with my toes. I'm like, well, you're supposed to be able to.
Yeah, you're supposed to. And that's just one of the exercises that I'm doing right now, actually. Trying to pick up things with my toes.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and what is more interesting is the fact that to complement this type of treatment with the machine that activate your nervous system makes a big difference because, as you said,
Yeah.
sometimes your brain is just not activating those things.
Well, it's in recovery mode. It's in protective mode because it isn't 100%. And all the receptors in your feet, all the mechanoreceptors, all the nociceptors in your feet are sending information to your brain. Like anybody, whether you have an injury or not, if like especially in modern footwear, all the comfortable shoes and running shoes, your feet get so deactivated and they get smushed in because the shape of the shoe. So I would say 99% of everybody that's on my table, when I do anything with
Hmm.
their feet are down regulated. And just think that's where we contact the earth. That's where our brain is getting all this information from to where we are in space, like from a proprioceptive standpoint. So if your foot or your feet are sending the wrong information to your brain, say your feet are just deadened or they're filtered or they're not communicating properly, and even though you're standing straight in front of me, but your brain is telling you that you're turned 5 degrees to the left, even though you aren't, but your body is turning some tissue on to turn you back that other way 24 hours a day. You don't know this,
Yeah.
and then it's causing injury. You're not realizing it. You sit in front of a computer all day, or you're twisted, and that over time causes an injury. You could not play any sport. You don't even have to go to the gym, and you could be somewhat active, and that poor information will cause so many problems.
Yeah. So in reality, when we start feeling the symptoms, is because the problem is being there for. Not talking about major injury. I'm just talking about positioning, posture, and everything. Sometimes just bad posture will lead to chronic pain, which is already a
Mm-hmm.
result of many patterns of bad behavior that you have throughout the day and how you sit
Yeah,
and everything.
and just your occupation. Like I have a bunch of other therapists that end up as my clients. I have chiropractors that are my clients, physical therapists, doctors of physical therapists, massage therapists that end up on my table. And I had a chiropractor client that, um, like, I do nutrition and I'll do training programming as well. And he was one of my distance clients, but he lives here in Dallas. And I'd work with him on a table. Everything would work pretty well. He's had some injuries, but still did a lot of martial arts, trained all the time. And anytime that I would add any unilateral lower body, any single leg stuff, he would blow his back out and be laid up for 10 days.
Oh wow.
So we'd come back, I'd fix them all up, I'd get them straight, I'd get everything working again, and it happened. And it happened like 3 or 4 times. This guy's been a chiropractor for over 30 years. So I just kept thinking, I'm like, hey, I'm missing something. So on the way home from work one day, I went to his office. I'd never been there. I walked in, he was there. I'm like, can I see you work out of the same room? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how long have you been here? He's like, in this office, like 22 years. So I walk in, and everything's on one side of the table. He's been working from the left side of a chiropractic table for 26 years and just didn't tell me that.
Oh wow.
I'm like, are you kidding me? The same side all the time. He's like, oh my God, I feel like such a moron. So I helped him right then and there. We mirrored his office and just flopped it the opposite way. And I told him, I said, we're gonna like freeze your kind of membership with me, and you're going to do basic mobility stuff that I'm going to give you, a lot of corrective work, no major training, okay, for a month, and just work from the other side of the table. So that's what he did. Just his normal stuff, but work from the opposite side of the table really made. He actually had to put a sign on his wall that said "the other side, dummy,"
Yeah.
like to himself as a joke to keep working from the other side of the table. And after 1 month, we went right back to the workouts. I programmed a ton of unilateral stuff. Never had a back problem. So it's what you do the most of every day, not necessarily martial arts or going to the gym. but those stressors and those loads will bring a problem to the surface.
Yeah.
But it's been there. It's what you do the most of all the time. Um, Sean Donegan, he's over at that gym, the power lifter,
Mm-hmm.
Big Sean. So he's a programmer. He programs like software for like medical software, and he'll sit in front of a computer for 14 hours. But he's also a power lifter.
Yeah.
So he gets such awful hip and lower back problems because he's in hip flexion for 14 hours a day. And then he'll go to the gym that night and not do a really massive dynamic warm up to get his whole body moving. He does the same old warm up, and then the guy's a world class power lifter. He's like nationally ranked. And then he wonders why he can't walk. He'll get up in the morning and have to walk with a cane for like an hour until his body straightens up. And then I get
Wow.
him. Yeah, and it took forever to get his body to open up.
Wow.
But
That's crazy.
I told him, I said, it's what you do the most of every day. It's that constant movement, whatever it might be. I mean, over 90% of the public now is sitting. You probably heard the term in the industry. I think Kelly Starrett had said it. Sitting is the new smoking. It just destroys your body.
Yeah.
Slowly, over time, lack of movement.
Mm-hmm.
The more technology advances, the less people move. And then they're captivated by their phone. And the biggest thing I see with athletics is, 20 years ago, kids would run around and play, and they played tag, and they were always outside and running around. And now you get a kid who's an athlete and who's naturally just strong. He's fast. He has just that natural genetic athletic ability. But the kid's coming off the couch. So all his movements are compromised, like at a young age. They've been sitting all the time. Their posture is terrible. And I mean, I've had some young kids that I had to completely change how they run. I had to reteach them how to run with the proper like hip angle and spine angle and where your feet should be. And they're like, well, I can run fast right now. I said, and that's great. I said, but you're going to blow your knees and your lower back out before you get out of high school if you run this way.
Yeah.
But these are all functions of what they do every day.
So you think that 20 years ago, when we didn't have so many connected devices, we didn't have internet, we didn't have a lot of facilities just to make our life comfortable, and not many distraction also. The kids who were more active, we probably had less issues like that.
100%. I've seen it. That, and back then there was less like specification for younger athletes. When I was younger, I played everything. So if you look at any pro athlete now that's really good, and you go back in their history, they played multiple sports. They played so many different sports, and they didn't really specialize or move into their final role until, senior year of high school or into college. Because, again, constant movement pattern. There's certain movement patterns for certain sports, and if you play multiple patterns, multiple sports,
Right.
your body gets strong in every movement plane, and you just get better and stronger. You stay healthier. That's why being that destination, just a ton of bodybuilders there, a ton of power lifters there, and everybody moves in the frontal plane, forward and back. That's all you do is push or pull in the frontal plane. Nobody rotates. Nobody works in the transverse plane, and they're very weak there.
Yeah,
and
don't even talk about mobility.
Exactly. We're talking to the Tin Man right now.
Well, I discovered this whole mobility workout when I met you that day that we trained with Greg, because Greg said, no, Patrick has some crazy mobility stuff that I'm doing. And that's when I actually start caring a little bit about mobility. But then when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, damn, mobility is actually extremely important.
100%. I mean, I remember that's the first day I met you, and I took 75% of the working weights that you wanted to use away from you, and you were like, "What the hell is this?" Nah, I can press those. I'm like, "You can press them great, but you're not using your chest. And if you're looking to change your physique, you want to train a muscle, not a movement.
Right.
If you're gonna go do another show, you ain't gonna wear a sign around your neck that says, I can incline press 120-pound dumbbells. You're going to present a physique.
Yeah.
So That's when you got to leave your ego in the car and come in with your brain and your work ethic and do things the right way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And again, mobility is so important when you're doing martial arts. I
Huge.
do judo and jiu-jitsu, and for both mobility, many hip mobility is absolutely critical.
So you get like three things that happen when you get really mobile. Okay, is one, your body releases more of your natural tissue, so you become stronger automatically by proxy of more available motor pool units because your body's not fighting itself. Your body feels it's fighting itself. It's not going to give you all the available tissue to use. So, a side effect of being mobile and stable is you immediately get stronger, even if you're not training like to get stronger, because your body doesn't want to fight itself. So changing flexibility, mobility, stability will increase strength right off the bat, and then it just makes it easier to do what you're doing. Injuries go down, the ability to recover comes way up. So
Why do you think it took so long for the fitness industry embrace mobility? Because if you think about 5 years ago, no one was talking about mobility. Some people will not even warm up before a heavy workout because they thought that will negatively affect the pump and the development. You know.
I don't know where you've been, but they still haven't embraced it.
Well, it's better than before.
I think you're just looking in a very small microcosm because I'm in that gym to 12 or 14 hours a day, and this things that I see go on in there, I scratch my head and I can't even look at
Well,
it.
but it's better than before because now there are at least more awareness about mobility. And if you, for example,
There is.
if you look to the elite CrossFit athletes, they all do mobility.
Well, they have to because they're just going to fall apart without it. There's just no way around it.
So why do you think that this mindset for powerlift and bodybuilders is still not there yet about caring about mobility? It's just
I think it's ego. I think it's they don't know what they don't know. That's what I see the most of. And I talked about this the other day with the age of information and internet and all the access to actually really good information. I just see the normal gym goer, bodybuilder, powerlifter seems to be getting more and more ignorant. I don't know how that
in
works,
my
but
opinion, what I think happens is they look at history, right? So they said, I never seen Dorian Yates doing mobility. I've never seen Ron Coleman doing mobility. So when they look to those Olympians that won many titles, they have like a recipe to build that gigantic body, and they were not employing mobility. So they just use that recipe and say, well,
how do
they
you
were
know
the
they weren't?
greatest, and they didn't have that.
But how do you know they weren't? That's the thing. Is there was social media following people all over the place back then, and a magazine to sell magazines is not going to watch Dorian Yates stretch. That doesn't sell magazines in muscle development, muscular development.
Hmm.
So a lot of the guys that stayed injury free, they definitely employed mobility. They employed certain stretching, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have gone where they went. And then also there's some just genetic outliers that, to get that big and round, you have to have really pliable fascia. That's why these guys look like balloon animals. They look gigantic and hard on stage, but I work on some Olympia level athletes and they're so soft. Their muscles so pliable and soft, even though they look like, they're as hard as a brick. They're not. They're very soft. Like the guys that I work on that, or even say like a good national level bodybuilder that are hard, they don't go anywhere. They'll never be able to stand next to somebody with that really just genetic, soft, pliable tissue. It's just, and that's something you can increase maybe this much, but this is where genetics play a huge
That's
part.
pure genetics for sure. So there is
Mhm.
so but of course, if they were doing more mobility, probably they will get a little bit better.
Yes, 100%. But you also, the funny thing is that from doing this for so long, I also see somebody's temperament So the guys that are way more just laid back, they're much more pliable. So it affects everything. It's kind of crazy.
That's interesting. That
Hmm.
if you had to put a regiment for mobility, do you think that mobility work is something that you need to do every day or 3 times a week is enough?
Yeah, I mean, everyone hates me because you know me. I'm an it depends person, and it really
Well,
depends
because
on
that's science, right? Science is always it depends.
it. Like I work with my business partner Duke Manyweather. We work on all these offensive linemen in the off season, and every day, no matter what group or what they're doing for their workout, we have them do this same dynamic warm up, and we watch them. We only have 3 or 4 guys, and we watch them move. We do created this dynamic warm up that makes like every muscle in the body work, and you watch them move. So you're gonna have 3 guys that did the same workout the day before, and out of the 3, only one of them is fully recovered and can go through the dynamic warm up perfectly from a biomechanical perspective, and the other 2 are all jammed up, or one thing's jammed up, one isn't. So it depends on everybody, because then we look at it and see if, hey, listen, we might have to scrap the workout that we have written out for today
Mm.
because you haven't recovered from yesterday's workout. Your mobility's bad, your biomechanics are bad. So why would I heap a whole nother workout on top of a body that hasn't healed all the way? We have a B workout, a C workout.
So
And,
that
hey,
that's another
sometimes,
that's another thing that goes completely against the bro science of no pain no gain. Oh, it's hurt. That's good. Go.
okay, well, why? Who? But I don't subscribe to bro
Yeah.
science. I mean, there are some things that worked from an anecdotal standpoint that might not have been studied, or might not have been picked up in the study, or maybe they were looked at and were used in a poorly constructed study. There are definitely some things that, let's say, the clinician was a decade or 20 years ahead of the actual scientist because they were in the trenches. But I mean, come on. So, I mean, some of the stuff I just laugh at. I get questions for things, and I'm like, this is kind of a common sense question,
So in your opinion, if you have muscle soreness from a previous workout, there is no reason for you on the next day.
Soreness has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Okay. And it also depends on the type of athlete. You know, you can do stuff like you can do Olympic lifting where it's all type 2 training, right? You're type 2 ballistic muscle, you're doing really fast movements. There's no eccentric phase. And that's where all the muscle damage happens. In an eccentric phase loading is where you tear all the muscle. So you could do a Olympic lifting workout and not really be sore, but that will take so much longer to heal from a 3-hour bodybuilder style workout where you're actually mechanically damaging muscle. When you stress and beat up your central nervous system, it takes way longer to heal than just actual mechanical
Hmm.
tissue damage. So it depends in so many different ways.
Yeah, and the point of soreness has nothing to do with it. It's just because it depends on the type of athlete.
It depends on the type of workout. You can have twins in front of you and give them the same workout and they'll respond to it differently. It depends how they access tissue. Is the soreness a function of a weak body part that was like a secondary or a tertiary mover and what was the main mover that you had? So
Hmm.
that's sore. Now, if that's weak, and that's a weak point, and say your triceps hurt from doing a chest workout and you have arms the next day, I'm not saying not to do tries, but I wouldn't torture them.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
So it's common sense. I there's such a fine line with self-regulation and also following the plan. There are times where you have a written plan out and maybe, you didn't get all your meals in, or you had a really stressful couple of days at work. You slept like shit.
Hmm.
But, the whole, I hate the grind it out or beast mode is the dumbest thing. Like, oh my God.
Mm.
I mean, it just sounds so ignorant.
And for those scenarios, do you think that something like cryotherapy helps to speed up the recovery?
Um, I like contrast better. Not that cryo's bad, but doing heat and cold back to back seems to yield the best results. So, like, sit in a sauna for 20 or 30 minutes and then immediately get in an ice bath for 3 minutes.
Really,
Because
immediately.
you're, yeah, like
Y- y-
within 90 seconds,
I
2 minutes.
saw Sean, one of the four times strongest men in the world, doing that.
Yeah, Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw,
Mhm.
yeah, he was doing this interval.
It works. Period. I mean, even if you don't do the ice bath, there have been a bunch of studies that stressing the body with heat can lengthen your lifespan. I mean, it just the body responds to stress, and the old adage, and it's it's a cliche, but if you don't use it, you lose it. Our bodies want to survive and they want to be efficient. Period. So if you boil everything down and you keep those two tenets in your head that all your body wants to do is survive and all it wants to do is be efficient, and overlay that as a filter on all the things you're doing, you could probably really start to make some better decisions in your training.
Yeah. Yeah, there is such a hype nowadays with cryotherapy. Everywhere you see a cryotherapy chamber. Um, the,
And again, I'm not saying it's bad. I don't want that to come off like I'm knocking it, but it's not the answer to everything.
mhm. What will be the most recommended scenario for the cryo, you think?
I mean, I would do every other day then. You're going to do cryo one day, sit in a sauna the next, maybe a day off, try to go back and forth. Because what happens when you stress the body with heat, it responds with heat shock proteins, right? So now you got a higher protein level in your blood because you want to recover from the stress of the heat. Then the next day, you do cryotherapy. You get a physiological response with cold shock proteins. So your body's just always trying to recover, and it's not all that crazy stressful from a physical standpoint, like you're not beating up joints and things of that nature.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. And another thing that is growing a lot is the this laser treatment for rehab. What's your take on the laser treatment? You like it?
It depends on the laser. There's a bunch of different kinds out there. Um, if we're just talking about light, I really like some of the light therapy, red light therapy to your eyes, because we're very photosensitive
Hmm.
creatures. That seems to work pretty well. Um, Honestly, the simplest thing that I can shorten any recovery is systemic inflammation. Nobody really puts weight on food.
Yeah.
You have everyone that, because I do nutrition too, and I just see, especially in the fitness community, these people are eating the same 34 things year round for 10 years. We evolved as human beings to eat seasonally. We never ate the same thing all the time. There were no grocery stores. And it hasn't been that long since we evolved. It takes a million years to see genetic evolutionary changes. And right now, if we continued eating this way, we'd actually devolve, not evolve.
So
Because
the traditional prep meal for bodybuilding, which is the same thing for like 16 weeks, you don't really like it.
I don't like it at all. It just to rotate foods, and it depends on the quality of food. You see all these people that, oh, red meat's bad for you, or this is bad for. Well, if you buying your red meat at Walmart, who knows where that's coming from. It's quality of food items make a huge difference, and variety.
Yep.
And food causes systemic inflammation. Like if you don't cycle your food and you don't eat different things all the time, there's a moderation.
And food also can contribute with inflammation. I've solved that. Depend on what I eat, my foot looks better.
100%. And the crazy thing is, everybody is very individualized. So what would be a list of seemingly healthy foods that, you put 100 people in a room, 99 of them would agree that all these are healthy foods. But guess what? They might not be healthy for you. I have my nutrition clients do a food intolerance blood test, and it tests for 100 different foods. And that there's a moderation of food. If you eat the same shit all the time and you're eating the same thing, even though it's seemingly healthy. This test gives you back on a scale of 1 to 40. So let's say, you're somebody that just, I did it to myself 2 years ago. I love salmon.
Mm.
I had a couple of my clients that were big into fishing, like would go to Alaska and fish, gave me all the salmon. I ate so much salmon one year that when I did, because I do it every year to myself and it changes, salmon was like a 32 out of 40 for causing inflammation for me.
Wow.
Mushrooms. I was eating a lot of mushrooms one year. They were causing inflammation. One of my players, who was just, they're all big to begin with, but this kid weighed like 380 pounds and was barely eating and still continued to gain weight. There are some other factors there. But when I had him do the blood test, this poor kid could only eat like 15 things.
Wow.
He's the only person that I've ever made take this test that had a huge intolerance to kale, like the healthiest food on the planet.
Wow.
Like he couldn't eat kale, blueberries, coffee was killing him, black pepper,
Wow.
cabbage, like all things that you would think are really healthy, and they were causing a tremendous amount of systemic inflammation in his gut. It was destroying his gut health. So unfortunately, I pulled anything that was like an 8 or above on a scale of 1 to 40. I pulled out of his diet and said, this is going to be really monotonous. This is going to be really boring, but you have to trust me.
Yeah.
And started to feed him a lot of food. This is a 380-pound man, and I was eating more than he did in the whole day in my breakfast. And I started to stuff him with food, like over the course of about 6 months, I guess. I had, 10 times more calories per day, but with the right foods. And he went from like 381 to 335 in 6 months.
Oh, so he was eating way more and start to drop weight. That's amazing.
Well, because your metabolism is predicated on the induction of food. Everyone thinks I'm just going to stop eating or I'm only going to eat this much.
Yeah. Then you go to starvation mode. Your body will not burn.
100%. You'll lose some weight in the beginning, or if you're like really morbidly obese, that does work, for a while because your body has so much fat stores to eat off of. But it still has, you're still going to run into the law of diminishing returns to where, your workouts are going to be like, you feel like you're going to die in 10 minutes in it. You have to feed it. And there's different ways to program where you're overstepping and understepping to keep metabolic rate rolling. So your body will continue to drop weight, but still maintain performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an athlete, maintain recovery. If you're an athlete, maintain sleep, all this stuff. Like the simplest things that I work on with people is hydration, sleep, and variance of clean food. Like you just change those 3 things and be really consistent. You can make huge health changes. I don't care how old you are.
Not only health change, but you will have a high impact on your performance as well.
100% neurologically as well. You're more focused. You're not distracted. Your body's making the right neurotransmitters and the right hormones to keep you moving and rolling. We were hunters, man, and everyone just seems to be lost in that. I fast a lot throughout the year.
Really? So are you in favor of that fasting diet, the fasting approach?
Well, I don't do it a lot. So I fast 24 hours once a week. So I'll eat dinner Sunday night. I don't eat again on Monday night. I do that every week. But like every 3 to 6 months, I've been slacking this year. Just had a lot of things up in the air with my life, moved, did all that stuff. But I usually would do a 3 or a 5 day fast once or twice a year. And everyone's terrified to hear that. And
bodybuilders are terrified of fasting.
Yeah, that's ignorant as well. Everyone that wants to argue with me over that, I said, all right, you've obviously had a virus at some point in your life, right? When you're a kid, adult, whatever, you eat dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock, you feel awful all night, right? And at 10 o'clock in the morning, you throw up. What's in your stomach? 85% of your dinner you ate 16 hours ago.
Yeah.
So if you don't eat for a day, it's not going to kill you, but it does kind of give your gut, your intestines, your stomach a little bit of a break.
Yeah, but
So it's not
the
always having to
fear,
work,
at
work,
least
work.
on this bodybuilding community, is more to go on the catabolic state and start losing. You know that.
Yeah, but you're going to lose fluid, or you're going to burn up some glycogen. It's very rare will you really lose a ton of muscle. Not only that, but if you do, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago, I did a 5-day fast. On the fifth day, I'm 47. I'm 45 years old. I lifetime PR'd on day 5 my squat, my deadlift.
No way, really.
Yes, yeah, because we were hunters. We didn't have a grocery store, right? So if you killed something, you eat in abundance, and you'd have to go hunt again, right?
Mm.
So your body doesn't see food for 2 or 3 days. It becomes way more efficient. You're hell, my I'm a little deaf. You play the drums. I played the band forever. My hearing's trashed. My hearing gets better. My ability to focus gets way better day 3. Day 2 and 3 are a little rough. You're hungry, but then all of a sudden your body makes a switch, and you have crazy amount of focus, great neural drive. You're super productive throughout the day.
Are you?
If you
Did
train,
you do the ketosis test to see if you were in ketosis after day 3?
you know what? I didn't need day 3. Like I just have always had an inferno for a metabolism. And this past year, again, I have no excuse, but you've seen me, I'm in the worst shape of my adult life. I have barely trained. I'm eating okay, but when everything's normal in my life and I'm regimented, I'll go into ketosis every Monday, like at around hour 19 or 20 of my just Monday fast. I switch over like just barely into ketosis. I'll come up with
Wow.
like zero point 0.9, zero point 0.8, zero point 0.9 on my ketone meter,
Wow.
and I don't do a urine test. I have a blood tester. So yeah. And ketosis is great. I think it's great to use different times a year. I wouldn't eat that way or train that way all the time because, again, we evolved to do things differently. We're always in a cycle.
Hmm.
So, I'm not really a zealot to just one diet or one way. Everything works for certain
And not
people
only that, but
until
it also
it doesn't.
depends of the goal, right? And you work with athletes, so if you are going to off season, you're gonna have a specific diet. If you're going to a season of playing every weekend, you're gonna have a different diet. So that also changes according to the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I don't the one thing I don't subscribe to at all is this whole bulk cut thing because, yeah, the scale weight might go up for a bodybuilder, but it's very rare that somebody does a bulk and they put on 35 pounds and then the next show they go in, there's 17 pounds of muscle. They're lucky if they gain 2 pounds of muscle.
True, true,
So
yeah.
how healthy was carrying 28 extra pounds of fat on your body?
So
Just
you
because
believe it's
you
better to
look bigger in clothes
right.
and the scale said you weigh more, and it's not optimal hormonally. The more body fat you carry as a man, over, let's say, 12%, 10, 12%, 13%, it changes all your hormones. It'll affect the half-life of testosterone. Your testosterone will come down. Estrogen will be high. Like this, we can sit there and talk a 5-hour podcast on just that.
Hmm.
But, everybody, again, oh, I saw this guy do it, so I'm going to do it. And this guy did it, and this is what he did for years. And I'm just like, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree,
So,
and I think it's much better to at least try to stay lean all year long rather than go into
yeah.
those bulk phase.
Hmm.
But what I was
Not
talking
only
about the
that,
diet itself, right? I mean, the type of food that you are going to consume when you are 2 weeks away from the show, it will be different than the one that you were 16 away from the show. So the type of food it will be different.
well, I don't know about the type of food, but the amount, okay,
And the
the
macro,
frequency.
let's say the macronutrients.
Yeah, yeah, in just amounts. Like I see all these people, and you hear them, oh, it's peak week, and I'm going to do this and that, and I did show prep for a long time, and I want nothing to do with it anymore. I'm just like so burnt on it, because everybody wants to do what someone else is doing or what this guy said. And when you really look at the actual science of it, it doesn't really go down the same road, or it's not really hand in hand on what you see or hear 85% of people doing. And they're so resistant to it. And well, my last coach did this, and I'm like, well, then go back to your last coach. Obviously, it didn't work for you, because if it did, you wouldn't have hired me. Like, it's like, if you run your head into the wall and you cut your head, are you going to do it again? Like, it's just the definition of insanity. Do the same thing over and over, but a different person's telling you it, so it must work this time. It's very frustrating,
Absolutely, yeah. And Bren and Patrick, as you said, we could go to hours and hours here because you have so much content and knowledge to share. So I really appreciate your time. At the end of the day, a lot of work today, and you taking the time to discuss all those things. Thank you very much for sharing all that information.
Yeah, sometimes, it'll just make somebody think differently. I mean, I'm at the gym and I'm out in the open when I work on people, and anyone that comes over and asks me questions, I'll answer them the best I can. Try to give them information. I've always loved Dave Tate from Elite FTS. His motto in life is live, learn, pass on. Whatever you learn, you should teach other people. Don't be greedy. Don't be insecure.
Yeah, educate.
You didn't invent it.
Yeah.
All the things that I've learned, I did not invent. I sought out people way smarter than me and tried to possibly learn what they learned. Now, I would just feel like it's unprofessional by not letting people know.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you very much for your time again, and great chat. Keep it up, the great work.
Of course, we got to get you back in and get you back in that water bath.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
Take care, my friend.